And it's time to record a podcast. Ba-do-do-do-do-do. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Bittersweet Tapes podcast. I can't even get my own name correctly. But welcome back, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well on this fantastically hot Thursday. At least hot if you're on the East Coast, because Jesus fucking Christ, I'm so tired of being outside in the heat. But it is currently 6 o'clock. I have my McDonald's in my belly and my McDonald's Sprite in a cup next to me. So that means it's ready to fucking go. Alright, so today is Thursday, which means random topic. And today I'm going to be starting the first episode of the series that I'm going to be calling the Gods of the Genre series. And I will take the series to talk about a particular album or project that I think is a quote-unquote near-perfect album or a near-perfect example of a particular genre or subgenre of music. So some genres that I'll be covering in the future would be things like experimental hip-hop, alternative pop, neo-soul, dance, concept albums, things of that nature. Really anything. Any genre, like just any genre or subgenre, or it's kind of like facet of music that I feel like I have an album on hand that I really like that really exemplifies that genre. I'm going to talk about it. So today the genre that I'm going to be talking about will be focused on alternative R&B. And when I mean alternative R&B, let me just say that the biggest difference between what I would call alternative R&B and then what I'm going to call traditional R&B is that traditional R&B tends to be more jazzy or like actually be performed with like a live jazz band or has a lot of jazz elements in it, while alternative R&B is more electronic in terms of like the creation, like the music creation, and tends to have more elements found in hip hop, so like sharp snares, heavy bass. And I'll talk about some of those things and some more later. The album that I think perfectly embodies what I think this genre is really capable of and what the genre is really about is an album called Truth Is by my girl, not my actual girl, but an artist I really like called Sabrina Claudio. It is her sophomore album and it is her fourth official project, so she went like EP album. And I found Sabrina Claudio after the release of her debut album called About Time all the way back in 2017. And I found it because I was still on Apple Music at the time. Sorry, Spotify. But Sabrina Claudio, was part of Apple's Up Next Artist little program, which I kind of briefly talked about when I talked about Black a couple weeks ago. But the Apple Up Next program is basically just, I shouldn't really call it a program, but the Apple Up Next event, whatever, basically takes an artist. Apple finds an artist that they think has a very interesting story or will essentially just be one of the next big names in music. And they do like a very small mini doc on them. They do some of their own in-house recordings of them. And then they promo them all over iTunes and Apple Music and all that stuff. But that's how I found her. And since then, she has become one of my favorite artists ever. Easily one of my favorite vocalists ever. Easily one of my favorite female artists ever. And she owns one of my favorite songs of all time, which is Belong to You featuring Black, ironically, which was off her debut album About Time again. And when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about for this podcast, I was between talking about either About Time, her debut album, or Truth Is, her sophomore album, for analysis on this genre of alternative R&B. And I kind of decided on sticking with Truth Is, mostly because it's a way more recent album. It came out in 2019, and I like it slightly more than I like About Time. So I decided to keep About Time. I might talk about it at a different point. There's some really spectacular songs of the album. Again, Belong to You, one of my favorite songs of all time, is on that album. And there are a bunch of other really amazing songs on there. But I think as a complete album, I think that Truth Is just does it for me more. So that's what I'll be talking about today. But that being said, definitely go check out About Time. It's an amazing album. And I think it also does a great job of displaying her musical style and her musical talents and what she brings to the table in that aspect. So, let's get back to Truth Is. Just some logistics about the album. Came out in October 2019. It is 11 songs long, 38 minutes. And I have I think that's pretty short for a full commercial album. But I'll touch on it a little bit later. And I'll talk about why I think that's a good thing. There's only one feature on the album, and it is Zayn from One Direction fame. And I have a small note here that Sabrina Claudio shares a manager with The Weeknd, who I think would be an amazing feature on one of her songs, or vice versa. I think she would also be an amazing feature on one of his songs. But that is wishful thinking. We'll see if that happens at some point. And then one more note I have about this album specifically is that the title track, Truth Is on here twice. It's on here once as the original song, and then it's also on here once at the very end as a bonus Spanish version of the original track. And that's worth noting because because of that, I think it's worth noting that she is half Cuban and half Puerto Rican. Just to put that out there. Okay. So logistics out of the way. What makes this album the example of an alternative R&B album to me? So the way I'm going to approach this album, and then probably any other album that I'm going to talk about using this kind of format, or as a part of this series, is I'm going to break up the discussion into, for this one, it'll be 5 pieces, 5 different aspects of 5 different aspects that I identify that make up alternative R&B. One of them is more of a universal aspect, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. And those aspects for this album, or for alternative R&B, that I picked out and I'll talk about, are a strong vocal performance, strong hip hop influence, a lot of electronic production, traditional subject matter, or the subject matter of alternative R&B is found throughout the album. And then I also have the album contains variety while playing to its strengths. That's more of a quality of an album thing than a genre specific thing, but I think it's worth talking about because, again, it's what that I think really that little aspect really makes an album great, at least to me, having variety while playing to its strengths. But again, we'll talk about that later in terms of this album, Truth Is. So, we're going to start off with vocal performance, and I'm starting off with vocal performance because this, to me, or at least one thing that I look out for a lot in terms of alternative R&B and any kind of R&B in general, neo soul, alternative R&B, regular R&B, R&B/pop, all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing that I look for is the vocal performance, or the singer's vocal skills, like how well they can actually sing without needing a shit ton of effects. And I'll say that the single thing that got me hooked on this girl is her voice, because ooh baby, it isn't. People would like to say that. Specifically with female voices, with female soul and R&B singers, people like to say, like, if they have a good voice, that their voice is angelic, right? This girl's voice is legitimately angelic. It is so smooth, so beautiful. I like how throughout her songs, they put very little effects on her actual voice, and especially in the sound, there aren't very many effects, and if there are, they're not very obvious. I do follow her on Instagram, where she sings like a cappella, or she just kind of just riffs through some stuff. Every once in a while, she'll post a video of her doing, and she sounds exactly like how she sounds on the album. It's just her singing to a camera, so her voice is very good. Doesn't need a lot of effects. Her voice could pretty easily be pigeonholed into being like a whisper R&B voice. And while I think that's relatively accurate, I think that kind of term whisper R&B is kind of condescending, at least in the ways that I've seen it be used. But I love whisper R&B. That's my that's my shit right there. I love just kind of like the calmness of it. I like how in a lot of times the voice and the beat and I'll talk about the beat more in a second. I think when you have something like whisper R&B, it really gives the artist and whoever's like the engineer and the producer and whoever's making the actual song and the album, it gives them a lot of room to just kind of play around with the balance between the person's voice and the instrumentation. And I think she does it really well, and I think this album does it really well, which obviously is why I'm talking about it. But back to back to her voice. It's like super soft and like sultry and sexy, and it's just like really good. I really like it. I put it for my friend who isn't really into this kind of like whisper R&B stuff, and she didn't like it at all, which, I mean, fair enough. If you don't like that kind of genre, or that genre of music, or that sound of like someone like, not like actually whispering into the mic. I want to be clear, whisper R&B is not doesn't mean that they're literally just like ASMR whispering into the microphone. It just means that they're singing at like a quieter voice, and it's not like raspy, but it's a little bit more, I'll say coarse, even though coarse again isn't exactly the right word, but it's what I use there. But honestly, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just check it out, check her out. You'll know exactly what I mean as soon as you hear really any of her songs. It's like, I mean, I could like talk for a while about how much I love her voice, except I'll run out of words very quickly. But I mean, honestly, like, I love her voice so much that I could legitimately listen to an entire album of her reading the Yellow Pages as long as the beat was okay. It's that good to me. And I'll talk about it more in a little bit, but she clearly uses her voice as an instrument, at least in terms of, she knows how to use it very well. She knows how to use it with with a whole bunch of different instrumentals. She knows when to raise it, when to be quiet, when to use it well. Like how a very highly skilled musician can play an instrument very well. She can use her voice very well. And again, in terms of this genre, that's one thing I really listen out for, because it's one thing to just have a decent to good singing voice, and then just go and then be a good songwriter, and then kind of go into a room with some music producers, and then to just sing the songs that you wrote, but then just have loads and loads and loads of effects put on it just to make it sound good. And she doesn't need that, and it's something that I give this album a lot of points for, and her as an artist, I give her a lot of points for. Of course, her vocal performance is insanely strong throughout the entire album, but it really shows on songs like Take One to the Head, Hurt People, I Don't Mean To, and Holding the Gun. Again, so what I'll end up doing for this whole series is every aspect that I talk about, I'll give examples of songs on the album or the project that exemplify that the most. It's not to say that the other songs don't also have that same trait, but when I listen through it, those are the ones, or if you want to know more about what I'm actually talking about, those would be the songs that I would point you in the direction of to go to first, if that makes sense. So those 4 songs, again, Take One to the Head, Hurt People, I Don't Mean To, and Holding the Gun, are really, really, really awesome examples of how good she is at utilizing her voice. Okay. So that moves us on to hip-hop influence. And when I say hip-hop influence, I'm mostly referring to the instrumental of the song, not to like the lyrics or the flow for the most part. It's really just like the beat, or I'll just say more generally the instrumental. Going back to the difference between traditional R&B and alternative R&B, the switch in instrumental from smoother jazz to like a harder, sharper drum pattern is typically found in like like it's mostly found in hip hop, right? So, or at least in the sound of hip hop. So not to say that the hip hop instruments or instrumentals make the song less smooth, but it just gives like a different path for the song to go on. So like a song could either be insanely like like the example that I or the as far as like the spectrum goes, like the farthest smoothness that I can go to would be like lullaby smooth, right? So in terms of like R&B, at least the way I see it, you can either go to the lullaby path where you're just like super soft, super calm, super smooth, and in a lot of, unless like you do it insanely well, just kind of boring. I think lullaby-esque music is, it's easy to be boring, right? And then the opposite side is to be like super like hard hitting in terms of like your vocal inflections, and then like and it's very carried by the beat, right? So if you have a lot of really sharp drums, really heavy bass in your song, it's gonna hit super hard. And off the top of my head, I'm kind of like someone like a Chris Brown, or someone, again, Chris Brown makes pop R&B music, so it's meant to be more upbeat and meant to be more in your face. But those are kind of the two paths that that you can go on, or at least those are the two ends of the spectrum that you can lean towards for R&B. And I think, this alternative R&B really leans more towards that harder, in your face style of the genre, without completely alienating just like how beautiful it can be from the other side of the spectrum. And on this album, she does have one or two songs that I would consider to be kind of traditional R&B. And if you want to hear the difference, I would say go from Hurt People, which is more traditional R&B, at least to me, to Me and Her, which is a lot more alternative. And if you just switch from one to the other, you will immediately hear what I'm talking about. Other than Me and Her, other than the song called Me and Her, I think that Holding the Gun and Take One to the Head also have really prominent hip-hop instrumentals. And what I really love about this album, and what it does with this kind of hip-hop influence, is that it uses it almost in like a sneaky way to make songs that would otherwise be like relatively slow and somewhat empty or bland, like the lullabies I was talking about, into like songs that have like this legitimate structure that you can like nod your head to, like like you can nod your head to it, and it keeps you very entertained. Right? It keeps you, I don't want to say energized, because it's not like hype up music or anything like that, but at least keeps you involved in the song a lot more. Like, for example, you can hear a song you never heard in like in the club, or on the radio, or just in someone's car or something like that, and it has like a good like bass line, has a good beat. Like, you can just kind of find yourself being pulled into the song even though you're not actively listening to it. That's kind of what this hip hop influence does for alternative hip hop, or alternative R&B, excuse me. And I think that's a really smart way of doing things, because it really allows for more people to be comfortable listening to this kind of music, or at least be more interested in this kind of music, because your brain and your ears tend to like gravitate towards that kind of song structure where you're just like, oh, like I can like you can feel the music, right? You can just kind of like actively, and like I always bob your head, nod your head, whatever. And it's very easy to kind of get not hooked, but I got hooked, but for probably more people, it's a lot easier to kind of get a good grasp of this music if you're coming to it for the first time from like a completely different genre. Especially if you're coming from a genre like hip hop, which most of the mainstream music is kind of dominated by like the hip hop influence. So in a way, it makes alternative music more mainstream, even though alternative R&B, excuse me. Even though alternative R&B is relatively mainstream to begin with, it's that way for a reason. It's mainstream because you're familiar with it. It makes you more familiar with the song. And again, even though this album kind of leans more towards a hip hop influence, it does it does play with you. Like, her voice essentially pulls an equal battle of tug of war with the hip hop influence, and it works like perfectly. It's perfect throughout the whole album. And again, I was able to identify one or two songs that don't have really as much of this influence, if any, but the fact that the other 8/9 songs on this album have it, I think it's a good balance, and I think it really exemplifies the difference. There are some hip hop elements in those two songs, but not a lot, not more than, not even close to like the others. And I think this ties very closely into the electronic production aspect that I was talking about, that I mentioned earlier. And when I mean, I think it ties in really well because it's really about applying the sounds to the instrumental, or like the sounds that are part of the instrumental, right? So by this I mean that the instrumentals of the songs are made up of electronic sounds from a program rather than an actual instrument, or at the absolute least, this kind of applies to the actual instruments that are being played somewhere, whether it be by someone in the studio, or they're taking it from somewhere, they're taking like a loop from somewhere, they're taking a sample from somewhere. They're mixed to sound almost unrecognizable from those instruments, and they really just sound like sounds. I'm not sure how better to really explain that, but like the best way I can explain it is like, I don't know, if you hear like a Zed song on the radio, or I guess it's 2020, so if you hear like a Marshmello song on the radio, and the quote unquote bass drop hits, lands, whatever, drops, and like it's like the womps and like just the sounds, they don't sound like an instrument, it's just like all computerized sound. That's kind of what I mean. That's more like, that's like the best way that I can just kind of describe it to you without actually playing it for you. And stay tuned again. Well, not again. I haven't mentioned this before, but this is the first, again, these little side note here on the podcast itself. So the Bittersweet podcast is going to have seasons, and my plan is that every season I bring something. When I finish the season, I start the new season, I bring something new to the table. So in terms of the production of the podcast as a whole. So I'm really hoping that in the next season I figure out a way to play music through the podcast while I'm recording my voice, so that I can actually play the songs for you that I'm talking about, play the music for you, because again, music is so much more understandable if you just hear it while I'm talking about it, instead of just me just using the same whatever 12 14 words over and over again to describe these sounds. So stay tuned for that. I'm working on that, so that's going to be a really big step, and I'm actually super excited to be able to do that. So check back for that. Not sure when season 2 will start, but I'll be following my socials. Hicknope everywhere, HICKNOP on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, so check those for updates on the second season and when those music implementations will begin. Okay, so back to what I was talking about. In some cases, again, we were talking about electronic production. In some cases, I also counted this production as having an aggressive amount of additional or layered vocals that were added to the song digitally. And I don't want to confuse this with effects on her voice, because the way I see it is additional vocals don't change her actual voice. Like, they're not pitching her voice, you know what I mean? They're not like enhancing one layer of her voice. That's different. Like auto-tune, like there's no auto-tune, right? This is more like, you know, if they're using her voice or her rendition of the lyrics or the song or some stretch of lyrics, and they're just stacking her voice on top of each other in post-production, sometimes pitched differently, sometimes just louder or softer or whatever, just to add to the volume or the density of the song and how it sounds. I don't count that as an effect, and more of a production, like a post-production addition. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but they're not actually changing her voice. They're just adding more or less of her voice. I count that as electronic production. Anyway, so elements of this are found in every song on this album to some degree, but again, this is most prominent on the song Rumors, on the song On My Shoulders, and on the song Truth Is, both the Spanish and the original version. There isn't much to say about this section, but it is worth noting that alternative genres in general, not just talking about R&B, but also like alternative pop, alternative rock, alternative hip-hop, kind of tends, at least in my experience from my listening, tends to utilize more of these electronic productions, even though generally speaking a lot of the music made now has a lot of these electronic productions just due to the fact of that's how music is made now. But again, I also want to go back to the difference between what I'm calling electronic production and then effects on voices. There's a big difference. At least to me, there's a big difference. And yeah, so again, not too much to talk about that section. You'll understand what I'm talking about if you go back and listen to this album. You'll definitely understand. And it's not like a difficult thing to grasp. It's just kind of hard for me to explain it without actually playing it for you. So I'll move on from that. From the electronic production to probably one of the biggest. And there's a reason I saved this one for second to last. But subject matter, and when I say subject matter is very genre specific for the most part, or at least tends to be genre specific. Oh my lord, I sound like a toddler. R&B music as a like a very sweeping generality, is very full of emotion. Is very full of emotion, and there's no way that it really couldn't be, just due to the fact of how R&B as a genre sounds. It being super smooth and slow and just kind of seductive a lot of times. It's gonna be emotional, right? It's gonna be a lot of emotions in it. And in the case of alternative R&B, this emotion tends to manifest itself in very traditional and in some cases almost cliche scenarios, such as hookup culture, going through a breakup, or thinking about your ex's new love interest, the ever-evolving standards of love and relationships. And I have a little asterisk by that because I think that's the biggest one. I'm not sure why I didn't put it first, but again, I think the biggest subject matter in terms of R&B, and especially alternative R&B, is, I call it, or I kind of categorize it as the ever-evolving standard of love and relationships, because the reason I said all that is because the idea of love and relationships throughout the years, and especially if you're going to go back to traditional R&B music to now alternative R&B music, the love and the relationships, what's said about them changes a good bit, like a good bit. So that's why I put the ever evolving, because at the end of the day, a lot of it has to do with relationships and love and all that stuff. But what they're singing about and the angles and the scope that they're using to analyze or to talk about these topics is slightly different. So it's definitely worth checking out the difference. That's a big difference to look out for. And then also, I think that there's a lot of critical self-reflection within R&B music, and especially alternative R&B music. In most cases, like in this album, it's like super heavy on relationship stuff, as I said already. And by pretty heavy, I mean that so as I was writing this script, I was listening to this album, on repeat as I was writing the script. I listened to it beforehand. I listened to it endless times since it came out in October. And as I was writing it, I was like, in my head, as I was recounting what the songs are about, I was like, all right, maybe like 7 or 8 of the songs max are about relationships. 7 or 8 out of 10 / 11 if you're counting the bonus. Nope, every single song on this album is about relationships in one way or another. And each song goes into the way it gets away with this while still being, to me, a great album and like an actual like cohesive yet interesting album, is that it takes very slightly different directions with the relationship, with the way they talk about the relationship, or she talks about the relationship. or she talks about a different aspect of a relationship or a different time during the relationship. You know what I mean? Like how a relationship tends to have stages. She talks about different stages of those. But at the end of the day, the relationships are still like the jumping point for every single song here. Which, I mean, if you're not into hearing music like that, I mean, I'm not sure why you would. Or why you wouldn't, excuse me, oh my god. Why you wouldn't. Unless for some reason you can't identify with some of the things that she's talking about. But the things that she talks about are very relatable. Obviously, a good artist, at least who's using relationships as like a crutch, I shouldn't say a crutch, as a subject matter for her album or for her song. A good artist who's doing that would be able to make it relatable, even though every relationship experience is different. And I think she does it really well. And that kind of leads directly into the last aspect of what makes this album great and what makes it a great example for alternative R&B is the variety that it displays while still playing to its strengths. Jesus. Again, every song on this album is somewhat about a relationship issue or experience or situation or, X word. It's about relationships, right? That being said, however, this is done on purpose, as this is easily Sabrina Claudio's sweet spot for making music, or her you could call her expertise in songwriting. She portrays herself as a singer-songwriter combo, which, I mean, a lot of R&B singers paint themselves as that, and it's a very proud, it's a very prideful thing to be considered like an actual singer-songwriter, the combo, right? It's one thing to just sing really well over whatever. It's one good thing to sing well, it's one good thing to write well, but if you can write songs that engage people and then make them feel something and then also sing really well over it or perform really well over those lyrics, then you're really special. And I think that Sabrina Claudio is insanely good at writing good alternative R&B relationship lyrics or songs. I think there are a lot of artists that do this. All right, I shouldn't say a lot. I think there are a good amount of artists that do this better. And there are, in terms of alternative R&B, some of which I'll talk about a little bit later. One of the big one that comes to mind is SZA. I think SZA is insanely good at not just writing really good songs about relationships, but I think she takes the whole thing that I talked about where it's a like an ever-developing, ever-evolving standard for love and relationships. I think SZA does that slightly better, or a decent bit better. I think she is a good bit more progressive with the way that she writes her songs from that lens. Another person that I think does really well in that is Lana Del Rey, even though I don't necessarily like a lot of Lana's music. Sorry, Sam. Or anyone who likes Lana Del Rey. But I think that relationships are still like her sweet spot. So like it's very, it makes sense for her to make an album about relationships. It's what she's good at. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, The variety, like I said before, comes from the change in specific relationship details that she decided to explore on a particular song or stretch of songs. And some of the examples that I want to just kind of touch on, I'll go through the songs and I'll go through what the subject matter is about on the songs. So the first one is the song Truth Is, and the song has Sabrina trying to forget about an ex, even though she drove him away. I'm pretty sure that's like the message. She drove him away, is what it sounds like, and she still loves him. So I'm trying to forget about it. This dude, I'm assuming it's a dude. I'm assuming she's straight. I didn't do too much research on that. It's pretty generic in terms, or she's pretty ambiguous with the ex that she's singing about. But I'm just gonna make the sweeping statement that it's a guy. So I'm gonna refer to the ex as a guy for the future, or every time I reference this. If I'm wrong about that, sorry, but whatever. The song Rumors has two people with mutual friends or social groups that are interested in each other, and they keep hearing these quote-unquote rumors that they think so fondly of one another or they're really attracted to one another. and they're each thinking about following through about these rumors and like doing all these things together based on these rumors that they're hearing from other people about each other. That's the song that features Zayn, by the way. It's worth noting. So, the girl perspective is sang by Sabrina, and then the guy perspective is sang by Zayn. So, singing about each other. The song Me and Her, I love this song. I think it's my favorite song on here. I have a lot of favorite songs on here, but it's one of my favorite songs on here. And this song is about the new girl that Sabrina's ex is with is just another version of her. So from the way that she dresses to her physical appearance, like this new girl and Sabrina share a lot of similarities. But Sabrina Claudio, quote unquote, knows that the new girl will not be as good to her partner as Sabrina was, will not treat him as well, doesn't know that many things about him, like all these things. Just jealousy. That's not just jealousy. The song Problem With You is about Sabrina Claudio overthinking about her partner, questioning where he was the night before, focusing on bad parts of him, just kind of the second guessing stage of the relationship. And the last song, the outro, Holding the Gun, is about how she would love this person that she's in a relationship with, even if they were hurting her. And, the quote in the chorus is, I would take your bullet even if for you holding the gun. And she sings it way better than I ever could, so I'm not going to sing it, but that line alone is the entire message of the song. She also uses slight differences in like the levels and combinations of the instrumentals that I discussed previously to give the songs different tones and messages, or to give different tones and messages between songs. Rumors especially is like the really standout one because it's a decently radio poppy song. Like it has like this groove to it that you're like, all right, I could hear this on the radio. And to me it sounded weird at first because it's like all the music that I've heard from Sabrina Claudio is very soulful, very R&B, and then this song is very poppy, which is not necessarily her bag, but it's still a really good song. And I was just surprised to hear it, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you listen to it. And to counter that, Hurt People is very slow and sensual, and it's very impactful. It's like a listen by yourself song. You're not gonna really hear this on the radio. Again, her voice is her selling point, which she really flexes on each song, regardless of tone. Not like overwhelmingly, or not like she doesn't put her voice where it doesn't belong. She doesn't like flex where it doesn't belong. She'll pull it out on like the chorus or just like a run here and there. But she knows her voice is good, and she knows that's what her audience likes, so she flexes it to say the least. And I think that this might be annoying to some people. It would be like Beyonce just pulling out all the insane vocals that she has, even though I don't think she's that legendary singer. It would be like Mariah Carey doing what is it? Dolphin tones, whistle tones. It'd be like Mariah Carey doing whistle tones every song she puts out on an album. Period. It's not to that degree. Sabrina Claudio doesn't do that on this album, to like not even close. But I could see how someone who doesn't like her voice or like that kind of approach to a song, I could see how they could relate to two. And some people could find it annoying, but I love it. If you like her voice, you'll love it. If you don't, sorry. Going back to the duration of the album, I think that if this album were like any bit longer, it would be difficult to maintain any sort of interest from the listener. Since, again, this genre can tend to be kind of cliche in a lot of ways, or it's very easy to be very cliche. And I think the genre itself can be fairly restricting in terms of content and sound, especially when it comes to a specific artist. Obviously, each artist brings something different to the table, but if you're looking at, a project, like if you're looking at all of Sabrina Claudio's projects, if you were to listen to them all four of them all the way through, you'd get bored, like insanely bored, because they don't sound exactly the same, but they share a lot of similarities. So, again, I think the 38 minutes, I think the sub 40 minutes, I think 40 minutes is like a super, super, super good sweet spot. 40 40 to maybe 50 minutes, depending on the artist, is like my sweet spot for like a full album. Again, depending on the artist and the frequency that they put out music. But for Sabrina Claudio, what the kind of music she makes, I think 40 minutes is perfect. And although you could debate me on whether or not you can remove a song, I think you could. I think if you held a gun to my head, I could have you remove a song on here and it would be fine. Obviously, none of the songs take away from the album at all. I think they all add to it, but it could do away with one more song if you're really kind of like dragging your legs through this album. Like you're just kind of like, you know, if it doesn't feel that good, you can skip a few songs without taking away from the overall message of the album. It's not that big of a deal. Overall, this album is insanely spectacular, at least to me. That's my opinion. But here, this is my podcast, which means my opinion is a fact. And anyone who wants to delve into alternative R&B or Sabrina Claudio as an artist, this is definitely the album that I would recommend to start listening to. I think if you were to pick, I don't think you should start with her EPs. I think her EPs are really good, but I think her first EP, the name of it is slipping my mind, but the first EP is very raw and it sounds unfinished. It's essentially a mixtape. I have like maybe 2 or 3 songs on here on that mixtape that I like. Her debut album, About Time, is spectacular as well. You can really flip a coin and pick it out which one you want to listen to first. You'll get essentially the same result. And I think her second EP/mixtape is pretty good, but if you like, that is like super soul, that is like super soulful, super R&B, like super slow, super like dramatic, super over dramatic. So if you don't like that style of music, do not go into that one. So I think this album is like a good mix of her talents. It's like a good showing of what she brings to the table. So I think this is like the marquee album to delve into alternative R&B or Sabrina Claudio. Other really great examples of alternative R&B that I would recommend would be Control by SZA, which I love that album, obviously. I talk about that album fucking all the time. Ayo. Alright, let's start this recording over again. Fucking Christ. Some other really great examples of alternative R&B albums that I would recommend are Control by SZA, obviously. Please, I'm I've been to this album so many times, I'm just begging you at this point to just listen to this album. But honestly, it's an insanely good example of alternative R&B, and SZA is an insanely good R&B artist. So she's probably a more popular example of R&B, and I don't want to say she has a good cult following in the R&B community, because she is signed to one of the biggest labels in the world right now, music-wise, or one of the biggest music groups in the world, being TD. But you know, just listen to it. Just listen to it. Again, it's Control, CTRL, by SZA, SZA. Another album that I think is a great example of alternative R&B music from a male artist in this sense is A Muse and Her Feelings. Muse being like a muse of a picture, MUSE, and then In Her Feelings, like that shitty Drake song. And that is by Division, spelled DVSN. OVO group, or pairing, 2 guys. Really great R&B artist, really great alternative R&B artist. That's also a pretty good example of a conceptual or a concept album, but regardless, go listen to that if you're looking for a more male voice. And then if you're looking for an actual popular artist that is very recognizable, but an album that is not necessarily as recognizable, I also have My Dear Melancholy by The Weeknd as a really good alternative R&B album. That's that's an EP. I believe it's only 6 songs, but you know, if you're adamant about, you know, trying out different artists, but you'll go more towards an artist that you know of, there's one by The Weeknd. Go listen to that. Call Out My Name is amazing. It's one of my favorite songs of all time. And anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. Anyway, I have to. Anyway, so Thursday, baby. You already know what that means. That means it's New Music Day. kind of midnight Friday. So Friday's new music day, but Thursday's new music night. Tonight, this is a big night for music. This could potentially be a massive, like, huge night for music. Absolutely huge. And I'll explain, if you're not privy, I'll explain why. Starting off, Don Toliver and Chase B single. Not really what I'm talking about in terms of big week for music, but I like Don Toliver. I think he's a good trap artist. But Don Toliver and Chase B single. It's called Cafeteria, I believe, and I already heard it because it was played on Travis Scott's Dotwave radio station on Apple Music's Beats One radio, and yeah, it's a good song. I liked it. I'm just waiting to download it and put it on my phone. J. Cole also released a 2-pack last night, actually. So last night being Wednesday night, and I already listened to the songs. I listened to them each. There were 2 songs, and they're the 2 lead singles off his upcoming album called, off of his upcoming album called The Fall Off. And again, it's 2 songs. I listened to them both twice. Once last night, once again today, and I like them. I'll talk more about them on Monday, but for now I'll just leave it at I like them. So go check it out if you missed that and you like J. Cole. All right, the big boys and girl, but I'll get to that. All right, Logic, the biracial king, the half white, half black, what do he call himself? Does he call himself Bobby Tarantino? Yeah, those are the mixtapes. Yeah, Bobby Tarantino, Young Sinatra. I don't know. What other nicknames does he go by? Whatever. Logic. You probably know who Logic is. So earlier this week he tweeted out saying that, "Hey guys, I'm retiring from music. Bye." Kinda. He said he did actually say he was retiring from music to be a better father, spend more time with his child. And, that's awesome. Absolutely amazing. Respectable move. A1 move. And he also announced that with his retirement, he would be releasing his final album called No Pressure, and that will be releasing tonight. And if you know Logic is if you don't know, like, how Logic streams, or you don't really care, but I think it's interesting, Logic streams like a fucking madman, and his core fan base is absurd. I like Logic music. His last few albums have been not good, to say the least, but I am very hopeful that this album is good. One, because I think his albums that show a lot of that you can tell he's been you can imagine that he would actually put a lot of effort into this. I'm like this there's no way this is like a bullshit album, right? Like, this is his last album, right? I have high hopes because of that. And I've also seen him, like, in the months prior, like months ago, just kind of linking up with different artists that I'm looking forward to, specifically JID. If there is a JID feature on this album, woo! That's it. That's all I need. That is literally the only thing I want out of this album. That's the only thing I want, personally. I mean, it would be awesome for him to have a really great final album, if this is indeed his final album, and B, he has made incredible albums in the past. I say incredible as a slight pun, if you know about his discography. One of his most well-recognized albums and one of his best-selling albums, one of his most critically acclaimed albums is The Incredible True Story, and that album is really great, really awesome concept album. I might actually do that for a concept album for this Gods of Genre series, but I'll save that for a different day. But yeah, so, big release for him, and big release for hip-hop music. A lot of people are looking forward to this, definitely, and it's kind of cool that he gave us like 4 days to really comprehend that this could be his last album, right? I think it's cool. I think it's a cool move. It's a good way to respect your fans, honestly, in my opinion. But then, and I shouldn't say but then, because I think chronologically it doesn't actually make sense, but in terms of how I'm going to just paint this little story, but then, Yeezy season approaching. The God, Kanye West, says he's going to drop an album tonight, which means he's not going to drop an album. Which means he's not going to drop an album tonight. Realistically, Kanye West has a better ratio of dropping albums when he didn't say he's going to release it than he does. There's a better chance of him releasing an album when he doesn't say it's going to drop than when he actually does say it's going to release, which is a very Kanye thing to do. But the number one rule of being a Kanye fan is to never, ever, 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 ever truly believe in a release date. I was going to say the first release date, but it's really any release date. Just, I mean, you know, you can hope, you can pray, you can, you know, think Jesus is king, and you can pray that he'll release his music on time, but he almost never does. I think he might, in his 9 solo album discography, I think he might have released 3 on time, and I think it was the first one, and then some other ones I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's only 3 out of 9 he released exactly on time when he said he would. However, if he releases this, that's kind of stepping on Logic's toes. Which, I mean, you know, they're not in the same lane. They don't, I mean, I guess technically they overlap a good fan base, but I mean, you know, like, I'm going to listen, you know, I'll stream both. The general listening public will stream both. If you like Logic, you'll stream the Logic album first, and then you'll go to Kanye's afterwards. If you like Kanye, you'll stream the Kanye album first, and then you go to Logic's. It's not a big deal, right? No biggie. If he drops it at all tonight, I'm not staying up for this album. I'm debating on whether or not I want to stay up and like actually like listen to the Logic album right away, or if I just want to just go to sleep, wake up tomorrow, and then listen to all the new music all at once. I might stay up. We'll see. But I'm not hedging my bets on this new Kanye album coming out. Sorry, I'm not. I can't. It's just not. It's just not worth it. But then, boom, boom, big steps. You see the glass of water shaking in your cup holder like it's Jurassic Park. Boom, the streaming monster. Wait, hold on. I can think of a name. The I don't want to call her a witch because that's kind of mean. The girl from Y. Then some girl from YO comes along. This morning I wake up. Hold on. Let me properly paint a picture. This morning I wake up, go to work, go on my phone because it's like 7:48 and I don't start working until 8. So I'm making sure I'm going through Twitter and catching up because I went to bed early last night. I need to catch up on what the hell is going down. Wake up, go to Twitter. Music Twitter is going crazy. I'm like, damn, what's going crazy? All my music accounts are tweeting and shit, whatever. I'm like, damn. Is this confirmation that Kanye's releasing tonight? Nope. Is it a Logic a track list with features? Nope. Nope. It's the goddess of streaming. The queen of album sales. The platinum princess. I don't want to call her the Y Missing Warrior. That's fucking lame. Whatever. I just like saying that she's from Y Missing. I just think that's the funniest thing in the world. Anyway, Taylor Swift announced last night / this morning. I forgot. I didn't actually look at the timestamp, but I read it this morning. And she tweeted out, and she said, "Hey guys, guess what? I've been inside like the rest of you guys, except my house is astronomically bigger than all of yours because I've sold millions upon millions of songs and albums and I don't know. I think Target pays me to I don't know. I just have a fuck ton of money. So I've been staying inside quarantining. And unlike the rest of you guys have just been sitting on your phone doing jack shit, I recorded an album. A whole ass album, guys. It's like 14 songs, I think. I made it with my friends. It's produced by someone. She used the word engineered, which I thought was crazy. I mean, good on Taylor Swift for really shouting out the people that make her music. I'm not sure if that's her actually running her Twitter account or her agent or her camp or whoever, but regardless, I'm going to put on Taylor Swift because I'll give her flowers. Shout out to Taylor Swift for recognizing her coworkers. She was like, hey, I made an entire album, wrote, recorded, produced, she doesn't produce, but somebody produced an entire 14-song album for me during quarantine in 4 months. And you know me, guys. You guys are like, I like to plan my I like to plan my album releases. And I'm sitting there like, all right, no, I know you don't like to plan them. Like, it's your label. I know, regardless. She's like, hey guys, usually I like to hold back. I like to make sure it's the perfect moment to release an album. But she said, not this time, guys. I'm releasing this album tonight. Friday, July 24th, 2020. I will be releasing this album tonight. Fuck you, Logic. And of course, fuck you, Kanye West. She didn't actually say that, obviously. But that's basically what she's saying. She's saying, fuck y'all. Realistically, all she could have done is... And this is why, listen, if you had... Okay, so say months in advance. Like, you had this date. Like, you just had this date, right? Like, there were rumors, whatever. You had this date. And it just so happens to conflict with another artist that's in a completely different lane. Like, for example, I'm going to use Taylor Swift and Kanye. How crazy of an example to use. That's fine. Like, you're not actually stepping on someone's toes, right? But nobody knew this album existed. I am willing to bet that T Swift had this in the cut, right? She had this album in the cut. I'm conspiracy theorist Nick right now. She definitely had this album in the cut. And she was like, yo, guys. She went to her label. She's like, yo, album done. Ready to release this shit. Let's pop off. Let's make the boys back home in Why I'm Missing PA proud. And they said, all right. Do you have like a time? Like, when do you want to release it? T Swift, you're the queen of this bitch. You're the queen of the music industry. Tell us, when do you want to release this album? And she said, you know what? I'm going to get back to you on that. And then she went home to her massive house in... I don't know where the hell she lives. In why... She went to her massive house in Berks County, in Why I'm Missing Berks County, PA. And she went on her phone because she was bored. She was lonely because she's quarantining. Maybe. I don't know. And she saw Kanye's tirade, and she's like, wait. Kanye's releasing an album on the 24th. My album's ready. Let me release my album on the 24th. And boom, we get today. The biggest night in music so far this year. This is the equivalent of Drake. Realistically, this is the equivalent of Drake and J. Cole, or Drake and Kendrick, or Kendrick and J. Cole, or Travis and Drake releasing just two monsters in the music industry releasing at once. This is it. And there are three of these guys. Like, Logic pulls numbers. Just like a fucking black hole. He's a number black hole. Kanye West, cult favorite. Greatest artist. Sorry. He pulls in his numbers. Taylor Swift, queen of the radio. Pulls numbers like they're nothing. She just has like a team of teenage girls just ready with their fingers on the iTunes download button. Saying, yeah, I can. My parents can afford $12.99. Boom, album bought. She just has that army ready. This is gonna be an interesting night. And I'm genuinely interested in all three of these albums. I'm not gonna lie to you. I spent 5 minutes kind of joking on Taylor Swift. I'm interested for this album. I'm interested to see what a Taylor Swift quarantine album sounds like. I'm sorry. I am. I'm interested. Sue me. But we will figure out if this actually is good on Monday. Or rather, I'll figure out tomorrow. But I'll tell you guys how I feel about it on Monday. I'll try to hold back my excitement. And again, this could be one of the biggest nights of music if Kanye actually drops. It already is, since Logic's retiring and Taylor Swift pulls an album out of her ass into the blue like a blessing. Bars. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see what actually comes out tonight. And yeah, so look out for new music. It's going to be a really great night. Twitter's going to be on fire tomorrow. Definitely. It's just going to be T Swift. If Kanye releases, it's going to be Kanye versus T Swift. It's going to be more beef. Kanye already on his damn horse tweeting shit. Pray for Kanye. Don't vote for Kanye. Just pray for him. But all right, I'm rambling now. So I'll leave you guys with that. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. Definitely go listen to Truth Is by Sabrina Claudio. Go listen to Control by SZA. And go listen to Graduation by Kanye West. I have been Nicholas Hope. This has been the Bittersweet Taste Podcast. And thank you for listening. I will talk to you guys again on Monday.